Good evening. Thank you for joining us for tonight's Inspiration webinar. Inspiration Software is the embroidery software line of G7 Solutions and designs in machine embroidery. Our Inspiration software line includes My Block Piecer, My Quilt Embellisher, Perfect Embroidery Pro, Perfect Stitch Viewer, Word Art and Stitches, and My Quilt Planner. Tonight's webinar is turning January's Brrrrrrrr into great monograms. We have a wonderful team assisting us tonight. Inspiration Tech Support Team, Nancy R., Chris L., Dory N., and I would like to present you to our inspiration from the north, the monogramming master herself, Katherine Artines. There you go. Again, thank you for joining us and enjoy the webinar.
Thank you, Dory. Welcome, everyone. We are going to try something different this evening because Perfect Embroidery Pro and Word Art and Stitches are very similar for monogramming. I'll be showing you the procedure in both software. To help you know which software I'm in, I've set the background color to pink in Perfect Embroidery Pro. And here in this side-by-side picture, you can see that the monogram button is the same and is in the same position in both the software. We'll begin in Perfect Embroidery Pro. As I begin this evening, this is January, and I know that there are a number of people that have joined us this evening who were lucky enough to get the software for Christmas. And if this is your first attempt, the thing I want to start you off with, just to make sure you are comfortable once you're in your software, to begin, how I got this clean screen is simply a File, New, and you'll be brought into a clean screen where you can start your fun. So do join us, and do know that there are many webinars online under the Dime YouTube area that will help you get started and to join in all of this fun. This evening with our monograms, we're going to start with our monogram button. As I click on that and bring my mouse down into the screen, you see that I have the letter A, much like we have if we're working with any text. All I need to do is to click on the screen and a monogram will appear. As you see here, what makes these letters a monogram is that the middle letter in the sequence, in this case the letter B, is the tallest of the three, and that's what sets apart our monogram from our text. It automatically puts it into the shape. The other thing, by default, it will always give us 3 characters because it recognizes that traditionally monograms are done with 3 characters. The A and C representing first name or middle initial. When we talk about monogramming and the traditional rules for monogramming, you see it applied here. The A is the first name, the B is representing the surname or last name, and the C is representing the middle name. If this is a combined monogram for a married couple, the traditional way was that the A represented the man's first name, the B, of course, the last name, and the C was the woman's name. In today's monogramming, you'll see it more and more often differently in that the A represents the woman's first name and the C represents the man's first name. There are many acceptable ways to create a monogram today, and we'll visit the non-traditional samples a little later once we are comfortable with what we have with our monogram tool. As you see here, when I created the monogram select is on. And what I mean by that, if I were to click on our normal select, do you see how we have our normal black handles and black line around the monogram? But if I want to bring up those special symbols, I need to come up here back to the monogram tool and click on it once. And here we see all of the symbols that we associate with any text. I'm going to review them for you again. If you've watched any of the webinars on the text, you will have played with these before. But as we see, the black triangle is a button. If I click it, I have isolated just this letter, and I now can do things to this letter and leave the BC in its original position. If I were to click on the C, I could drag that down to this position, and you see that I have created my own monogram on a diagonal from the original one that was given to me. I'll come up here to my undo key and click that twice to put everything back as it was originally. When you see these blue triangles right here, if you click on them and drag to the right, you see that everything from that blue triangle to the right is moved in that direction. I'll go ahead and undo, put it back. We could do the same with the letter C, and you can move those in outward as well to the right. You see two green circles. You'll notice something too here. As I'm up in my screen, the letter A is on the mouse because I could be ready to create another text or monogram. But if I rest here within and I see the hand, that is going to allow me to pick it up and move it. When I want to use that green circle, I need to rest right on it to get the crosshairs. I'm doing a click and drag, and you see that that top circle will exaggerate the shape of the upper part of the monogram. We'll put that back with an undo. And if I were to click and drag on the bottom, of course, I'm going to do the same thing with emphasizing the lower portion. So I can undo. These black handles will allow me to size on the right only. The left side stays the same so that I can make a different shape with the monogram. I'll put that back. And of course these on the left side will do the same. I could drag them and only affect the left side of the monogram. Those that are left, we have two black triangles pointing up and down. If I click and drag, it is going to change the height of that monogram. I'll go ahead and put that back. And these two black that are pointing to left and right, if it's a click and drag, changes the width of that monogram. Putting that back, we have one that's left, and this is our rotate. We can take that and rotate to any new position that we want and let go, and that's our new position. We'll take a look over here at our properties text, and to play with some of that here, you'll see that most of this text properties are the same for any of our texts that we've played with before. We have the ability to work with the height, to space in between those. As a review, if I were to type in a 15% space and do an apply, you see that more white space was given to me between the A and the C, and you can do that if that's necessary to increase the width of your monogram proportionately. Some of the things not applicable, of course, the reverse direction is only for circles, and there is no line spacing because this is only one line. But we have the ability to do some decor, which we'll play with, and also to choose a different monogram. I'm going to select this first one and just do a copy and then a paste and drag the other one here. It's still on the clipboard, so all I have to do is paste again and drag over, because we're going to compare these three, make some changes, and then do some comparisons. I'll do a right click on that color to change this, and over here in your properties text, you see that we have been playing with monogram 1. If I use the drop down arrow, I will see the monogram fonts that are available in Perfect Embroidery Pro. They are marked with a green M. The red F signifies the normal fonts that we have to play with. The P is for puffy, and so forth. So these are the groups for our monograms, and certainly I could click on the circle monogram and apply it, and I now get that look for my monogram. I'm going to turn on our 3D so we can see the threads and so forth in that monogram. If I click on this third copy, I'll change the color of that. Another option that you have, if you don't know what those monograms look like, we can click right in that white box and are brought into the catalog where we will see the monogrammed fonts. We have them here. Not only do we see monogram, but you actually see all of the fonts that are available in Perfect Embroidery Pro. And we can scroll down. What you will see here is those fonts are in alphabetical order, And when we stop with our Y and our Z down here, this is where the monogram shapes will begin. So ZAF is in our normal fonts and Backham starts our shaped monogram. So you can get a better look at these if you want to make a decision based on that. We'll play with the Nvidia. I can double click that to change my on-screen look. So here we have 3 monograms and they are different based on the font that we have chosen. The next thing we want to play with, I'll select our first very traditional font here, and we come over to Décor, currently set to 0. If you use the drop-down arrow, you will see all of the different types of Décor that are available for this particular monogram font. We'll go ahead and choose number 3 and apply it, and you can see, again, very traditional polygon placed around that monogram. Let's do the same for our circle font. We'll come over to Décor, use the drop-down arrow, and notice that we only have 2 choices for a circle. I'll go ahead and choose number 1 and apply, and we see it there. And then we'll finish up with the Nvidia. It too has Décor, and we see here lots of choices, some of which are multicolored. We'll go ahead and choose number 1 and apply, and you can see the look. So right off the bat, we have additional ways to have your monogram stand out. Now, let's take a deeper look at this Décor. As we select this, come over here to your sequence view and notice that this is only one text box. It is treating the Décor and the monogram as one unit, which is fine if we want the same color. But if we want the color of the Décor to differ from the color of the monogram, we're going to have to do something a little different to it. And before we do, please notice that with this selected, we have all of the properties that are available to us for monogram. If I want to change the color of the Décor, I need to right-click and choose this option right here that says Break Up Text. I'll click on that. We don't see anything really happen on the screen, but if you come back over here under Sequence and click on the plus sign, you see lots of run and satin stitches objects to this particular monogram with the Décor. So we indeed have done the Break Up Text. However, let me do something first and we'll come back to that. However, the first thing I would do is I would click on my Décor, move it out of the way so that I could select my 3 characters again and come back up here to your toolbar and click on Group. If I don't do that, all the individual pieces and parts of those characters are going to be movable, and I don't want that. If I want to pick up my letters and move them somewhere, I'd rather have them as a group. So at this point, we'll click on our Décor and just drag that right back into position, because at this point, I now can change my color. But please notice something. If I click instead on the letters, do you see how we no longer have the properties for text here in our properties area? It is treating this ABC as normal complex fill and has the normal properties for that type of object. So do be careful when you do that. Make sure that all of the look that you're after and the font that you want, all of the good stuff is done before you do a breakup text, because once you do it, you no longer have any of those text properties. However, we can go ahead and be a little bit more flamboyant and add color to our Décor because those are individual character. Let's do the same with our circle text. Remember, right now it's considered text. Here's all my properties for text. But if I do a right-click, break up text, I don't see anything happen here. But again, if we were to take a look at all the pieces and parts under that, you see that happen. Now, you can do an undo. And if I do an undo, it does put that back to normal text. But I'm still in the same situation where I cannot put multicolors in that. So at this point, I'll go ahead and again right-click, break up text, and I want to select my Décor so that I can click and drag around my characters and group those. I then bring the decor back, and this one I want a little bigger. I'm not crazy about how tight that fits with my monogram, so not a problem at all. I can position it where I want it, and again I can put any colors in there that I'd like. And finally, if we do the Dividia, right click, break up text, it is broken apart, and I will select all three of my characters and group that back. And now if I come over in sequence view and choose just the aqua, do you see that these two pieces are grouped? So I need to ungroup them so that I can change the color of the individuals. Oops. Come down here and select just my color, choose that color, and maybe I want to change the orange to yellow and have whatever fun time I'd like so that I can make those changes to the decor. So again, you have that option, but do remember that once you break up text, you can still play with them and do things to them, but they're no longer the text properties. Let's take a look over in WordArt for just a moment and make sure that we are understanding how this works here as well. We would click on our monogram. Once again, click in the center of the screen. I have the monogram 1 that we played with before. You'll notice that it also has the decor involved in it. And what I want to show you here is the fact that in WordArt, if I have my decor added, it too is considered one piece, one object, but if I do a right click, I do not have the option to break up text here in WordArt, but I do have a workaround for that. If we come over here to our properties available for us for text, and we come all the way down to commands and click on that, you have an option right here that says color change. So you could use the drop-down arrow and choose characters and apply, and you see that we now have individual color stops for that monogram and the decor. If you wanted to make it look like we had in Perfect Embroidery Pro, where the letters are the same color and just the decor differs, then all you would need to do at your embroidery machine is simply leave in the same thread and do your ABC with that same thread color and have the different thread color for your decor. So even though we don't have that particular option here in WordArt, we have a way that we can do that as well. And just as an aside, if you're ever wondering why did it pick these colors, take a look down here at your thread chart, and we have color number 1 is blue, which is our decor. Number 2 is the fuchsia, which is our letter A. 3 is the B, and 4 orange is the C. So it really is taking the first 4 colors. If I select that and come down and start and right-click on the number 5, notice that it starts with the 5 and uses the 6, 7, and 8 color. So that might help you understand what's going on with your color scheme. The other thing that is slightly different here in WordArt, if I use my monogram and I click on the screen and I want to come over here to change my monogram font, when I click on that window, it's only going to show me the monogram fonts that are offered here. So it's isolated them for us, and we can just click whatever fun one is there. But you will also have an alternative if instead you click on the text tool and click anywhere on your screen. It's going to come up with the default A. If I were to put in my initials, and I'm using the female, last name male order, and then I'll just leave it at that font. But if I come down here for type and use my drop down and say monogram and apply, notice that it automatically puts the middle character in the taller position, just as the monogram shapes do, but it is allowing me to use a normal font. If I were to click on that box, here are all of your many, many fonts that are available to you, so you could change to any one that you wanted. So again, you have total option when you are working with monogram and your text. Remember, with text, if you use the type set to monogram, you'll get that middle letter being taller. We're going to play with some other things that are available too with us here besides Décor. We have the ability to access fun fonts that are here. If I use my my text tool and click and come over here, you might have noticed these very fun, pretty fonts that are available to us. They start with the preface of mono, 01 down through 45. We have 45 to choose from, and you see right here the ending of them, but they are fun as well. And if I were to play with this one, I like the look of this. This gives us a different way that we can then use this, maybe not as a traditional monogram, but we can use it to personalize something. At this point, I would go and get another text box, come in here, scroll up to find my cursive, and type the rest of that name. If my little girl's name is Amanda, and add that. You can, and I'm double clicking on my zoom so that everything fits in my screen, and I want to size my Amanda to be more appropriate for my letter A. Maybe make that a little bit bigger by dragging on that handle, and I can use the same color green, and you see where those look very pretty. This same is available to you in Perfect Embroidery Pro. If we start with a clean screen, and I go get them as well. Now, in PEP, in Perfect Embroidery Pro, I click on the monogram tool. Remember, the difference here is that I see all of my fonts, so I could go get one of these fun ones and use it with my monogram tool. Having done so, it is going to put my monogram, the middle character, in the larger format, and then I have my A and my C on the side as well. So you have a number of fun ways in there with all of those 45 mono fonts that are available. One other thing I'll show you before we take a break here is our Monogram Designs. Not only do you have these kinds of fun fonts that are built in, but if you come up here under Text Designs, use the drop-down arrow and go into Monogram Designs, here you have 57 wonderful additions to your monograms. There are frames and enders and circles and all kinds of things that are quite lovely. We'll go ahead and play with one of my favorites here. Where is it? It's in the, here it is. Double click on that, bring it to screen, and if I were to click on my monogram, now remember I've got this last one is the one that I've used, so I'll go in and get one of my shape monograms that are down towards the bottom. Use this pretty one here. I can drag that to the middle of my design, and I could even change the color so it looks a little better, but look how pretty those are. If we go again, just to review, it is a drop-down arrow, Monogram Designs. This also is a fun one, comes to screen, and again, even if you were to put, I'll just copy-paste that one real quick, but you can see how pretty that looks too, or you could get a longer one, whatever you'd like. But there are many different designs that are available. Those are also available for you in WordArt. You will find them here, though. They have their own button in Monogram Designs. The same 57 are available to you. We'll double-click on this pretty tassel, and if I were to drag that a little lower here, and I could size that as well, and go into my monograms and bring in a pretty monogram to rest on top of that. Any of you that joined us for the buttonholes for Perfect Embroidery Pro might remember this tassel. I used it on one of our scarves. So you have both of those kinds of things available to you. Lots of fun, lots of different creativity that you can create your own individual monograms with. All right, we'll stop for a moment. Dory, do we have any questions that are coming in?
Yes, we have a very, very challenging one.
Uh-oh.
Yep. Our friend Vicky asked, she's got a 4-letter monogram to do. I've heard of this before.
Mhm.
Okay, a family name, a given name, and sometimes two middle names.
Yes.
They're lucky I never got a middle name. But are there ways of doing this automatically using the monogram tool in PEP? I or is this going to be a combo?
This is really with a 4. If we were to use our monogram tool, and we brought one up on screen, and I go in and add, we'll just add an R, okay, and I apply that, you see what we end up with. It no longer creates one of them as the middle character.
Yes.
When we've done that, we've actually sort of broken the mold in the default for this particular monogram. If I needed to work with this, I would use separate font boxes, which happens to be the next thing that I'm going to talk about. The other thing about this situation, there are so many different ways for monograms. We have so many blended families and professional women that use their maiden name as well. And if you search online, as I did, there are a number of sources out there that will give you hints as to how to do that. And again, anymore, it's not like in the olden days where we had the source, maybe Emily Post was our etiquette source, and I'm sure I just dated myself there, but there is no one source anymore for what's right or wrong in monogramming, unless you are sticking to a traditional formal monogram, as those that might be presented at the White House or some formal government meeting or something like that, because anymore the rules have sort of gone out the window. So Vicki, hold on for me until we get to those individual text boxes, and I'll see if I give you any good ideas there.
Okay, so but the plan B on
Okay.
this, none of these monogrammings will work. Am I correct?
Not for, if I were to take that same ABC and I added that fourth character, I could go into any of these, and the reason why is because the default is programmed for 3 characters only. So the minute you put a fourth
Oh,
character in there, it is no longer going to give, it doesn't know which one of those is the middle, and quotes
yes.
around the middle. So it just reverts to giving us all capital letters as they are.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome. Okay, well then we will move. We've seen how the monogram tool works in both Perfect Embroidery Pro and WordArt. Uh, we'll look at some other options for creating monograms. When we talk about different rules or different suggestions, really there are no rules anymore. And you can see that sometimes just even one character, you might have multiple characters with a decor similar to what we were playing with. You can do things that are out of the box. For example, I love this look, this very small monogram on the back of a collar. I think it's very cool because it's unexpected, and I'm all about the thrill of discovery, so I like that a lot. And then here you see this monogram in a little different position than where you would normally see a man's monogram on a cuff. So we do have some other options out there. And you also have help, because Dime offers this perfect placement kit that gives you different templates, many of them that are built in or given to you in the kit, that help you with proper placement. And again, this is going to be a suggestion, but it certainly is a help if you're starting from scratch and you have no idea where to put a man's monogram or whatever might be on your project list. So there are helps out there, so just be aware of that. We're going to look at some other options here, and these are going to be on the non-traditional side, and perhaps this would be more of what would help Vicki. Normally, I would just hit my open up here, but because I know we have some newbie people here, I'm going to click on File, Open. We'll take the long way there. I already have some designs already created for us this evening. We'll bring up this particular design file. And here you can see that these samples of monograms are a bit more art-like. When you create for someone else, whether it's a gift or you have a business, you really do need to think about the receiver and understand if they are a traditional type of person, they would maybe fall in the ones that we just played with, or are they more funky or contemporary? And maybe they'd like some of these that are presented here. When you create something like this, the trick to doing any of these looks, you are creating individual text boxes. So in this case, the K is one text box, the letter A is a separate text box. They both happen to have the same font, Ribbon Love, but the fact that I have created these in separate text boxes allows me to move them around and play with the look until I have something that I think is fun and that might be workable as either a gift or for my client. If you take a look at these, they're all done the same way. This letter M represents my daughter's first name, and it's done over here in an Arial Central run. The letter D is my son-in-law's first name, and then the letter F is done in a Diana script that is very fancy, placed over the other two. Here, if we wanted it a little bit more contemporary, the M and the D and the F are all separate text boxes. Sometimes, too, the font that you choose is going to maybe inspire you, or you might want to look at it a little differently, because with this letter A, if you take a look over here in my font box, it's a Farfel. I happen to like this font a lot and I use it often, but you see with my last name, the letter or the bar across A extends and gave me a little design area that I could put my daughter-in-law and son's initials on top and below that bar. It's the same with this letter A. You can see I liked this one as well because I used it 3 times, and it is the Pacific font. And again, looking like the K and the B, because I've placed them so close together, it almost looks as if that's one bar going down to do the K and the B. And here just playing with other placement of those little letters. Here playing with a very fancy script, and that's actually what it's called, is fancy script. And you can see I've done a K and an R in very small Gesture Pro, the complete opposite of the fancy script. They are a sans serif font. Here, PJA with the J nestled inside. And this one is August Morgan Roper Rottinghouse, is the newest addition to our family. My niece had a son, and she does keep her last name for career purposes. So in this case, because they both start with an R, these are 2 separate boxes. Originally came in this way, but all I did is use my mirror key up here, the flip horizontal, and I thought that that gave it a very unusual look to this particular font. And in this last one, we have the P, the K, and the A are all separate text boxes, rotated, positioned, placed, however you want. And at that point, when I was happy with the look, I simply did a select, and I grouped them, and then I'll change it to green so you can see that this particular one became this box, and I simply repeated the box and created a trim. This idea was not mine. I was inspired by Denise, who is editor of the Designs and Machine Embroidery magazine, and I saw her sample of something similar to this, and I liked it very much, so I played with my own letters and came up with this trim. So truly, your inspiration is everywhere. Now, let's kick this up a notch and play with a little bit more advanced non-traditional. Once again, I have a document created for us, and I will open that. And as you see here, some things you might not have thought to do with your characters. These two, not technically a monogram, but we are dealing with words. This box with Kate and Eileen Roche. You're going to see those if any of you have received your newest issue of the Designs and Machine Embroidery magazine, the January-February of 2016. You'll see this in that magazine with instructions on how to create that look. And also, this particular design was also in the magazine. And here I took a TrueType font and made part of it an applique and made part of it a complex fill, did that K and the B behind on the grid, and actually all the information you need to create that is in the magazine. Hopefully all of you that are out there already get the magazine, have a subscription to it. You don't want to miss all of the wonderful information that comes in here. There are many, many projects from beginner level all the way through advanced in all of the issues. This issue, the one I just showed you on screen, here is the sample that I sent in. This was done in volume 85 of March-April 2014. If you happen to keep your back issues, you can take a look. But all of the instruction that you need to create that is in that magazine article, as well as the other ones that you see here. And who can forget this gorgeous jumbo monogram, excuse me, that was on the cover of last January-February magazine in 2015. So again, wonderful information in here. And speaking of resources, pardon me, remember to visit Eileen's blog. With the URL, you can get on the blog and search. Here you see that I set it up for a monogram. And here is just a taste of the kinds of things that you'll see. She has, again, a wealth of information. This is about placement for men and choosing monograms for men. How to do a monogram on a sneaker, the tongue of a sneaker, is in her blog. Here we see her pictures on how to monogram a pocket. So she'll show you some very cool tools that are available from Dime. Here we have the perfect alignment laser shown on the pocket, and then she's showing you how to embroider. But take a look at the other very cool hint that she gave us. See where we have unsewn the three sides of the pocket, leaving it just tacked on the blouse in this area. It makes it very easy to hoop and very easy to embroider, and yet you can put the placement back very easily on the blouse and tack it back down. So these are just some of the things that are available on that blog. Speaking of pockets, it happens to be a happening thing at the moment, very on trend. Here is that look that we saw similar to Eileen's blog, where you could do it on the pocket, but you can also create your own pocket, monogram the pocket out of your pretty cottons, and then sew it to the t-shirt once the pocket is embroidered. And in doing so, it's very easy because in Perfect Embroidery Pro, we'll bring up a clean screen here, you have applique shapes built in. You'll find them under Text Designs. Let's scroll all the way down to Shield number 1. We'll double-click that to bring it on the screen. Remember, we found this under Applique, so I'm going to do a right-click, convert to, and change that to a run. I'm going to use my guidelines. So I'm clicking within that ruler and dragging over a guideline, making it even with my top points. I'll do the same for the other side. And then I'm going to click up here and drag one down about an inch away from my point. And what I've done is to give me placement. Let's come over here and click on our shape tool. I'm going to right-click on that point and delete it. Right-click, delete it. Right-click on this one and make that a line. Drag that up to that position. I will select both of those and delete those points. Right-click, make that a line. Drag up to my intersection of my guidelines and apply. Here is your pocket. We have made it a run. And all I need to do is go into my monograms, bring up a monogram. I'll go ahead and get that circle monogram. That's very on trend at the moment. And size it, position it, and there you have your pocket. And you could stitch it out in your hoop when you are finished with your embroidery. Those stitching lines, I would cut this about a ½ inch away from all my stitching lines, trim the fabric, fold those into the center, place that on my t-shirt or blouse, and then use my stitching line to stitch back over that, and then perhaps I would do a top stitch as well, and there's my monogrammed pocket. Very, very easy to do. And again, we found that pocket under your Text Designs applique shapes. Let's go back to this particular advanced look, and I want to focus on this fancy one right here, the Sophia Grace. I have isolated it in its own document for us to see how I did that. And as we take a look, notice that the S is going over the G, and then it goes under the G. And that might look very complicated, but when we break it down, it isn't. The first thing I did was go under your File and use Import True Type Text because I needed this to be artwork. Typed in my capital S, used the ellipse to go get the font. The font that I want is called Harrington. Remember, these fonts are showing based on the fonts that are available on your computer. So I'll use the OK, bring it to screen. I sized it to the size that I thought I wanted to work with. Okay, now I'm going to delete that one since we already have one on the screen to play with. So here's my S, and I did the G the same way. Group those. And the G is also a Harrington font. Now, what we have to consider is this area right in here where both of these letters overlap. We need to isolate these two bars on the G to delete them and these two bars on the S to delete them. And the way we would do that is, let's go ahead and zoom in so you can see what I'm doing here. We'll scroll over. We use our shape tool because remember this is artwork, and where this intersects, I actually need to pick my G. I'm going to right-click, split line, and do the same thing. Right-click, split line, right-click, split line, and at some point they're split. So at this, I'll just use that same point and split line. And now these two pieces are isolated, and I can simply delete them from my using the keyboard. I'm going to do the same for the S, and I would right-click, split line, right-click, split, right-click, split, and select that, right-click, split. We come over, and we see that these, I've placed them in red so that you can see them, and they are now isolated, and we would simply delete those pieces from the lettering, and we have the over-under that we were working towards with the S and the G. So you see that happen right here. The only thing left to do then is to select both those, and actually we have 4 pieces, 2 to the S and 2 to the G. Right-click, convert to complex fill, and you have that look achieved here. And all I did is to go into my pattern. I happen to like the brick pattern, and that is the one that's applied. To follow that up with my Sophia Grace, I simply typed in a text box that has the rest of the name, and I did a rotate. I rotated once, twice, brought that race up there, dropped it right in there, and sized it. You can size it however large you want it and place that in. With the rest of Sophia, I rotated that once, dragged it down onto the character, and then let's zoom in so you can see how I finished that look. Here is an example of it is selected normally. I need to go and click back on my text tool so that I have all of those symbols that we played with earlier. Remember that the black diamond allows you to work with an individual character, so that I could pick each one of those up and snuggle those back into the letter S and rotate or anything that I would want to do, And at that point, that's how I achieved that fancy look. So your friends or clients don't need to know how easy that was for you to do, because it does look very sophisticated. But that's a very fun area to do. Now, a few words about TrueType fonts. Okay, I've done a whole webinar on TrueType fonts, but when we're talking about our monograms and our characters here, I want to bring something to your attention. Here I've created a file already where the blue is done with the built-in digitized fonts that come with the software, and the letters in red here are done as your file import TrueType text. And I actually use the Kristen font. And I want to show you something up close, because when we talk about the built-in fonts versus your TrueType, take a look, and I've left this now in stitch mode so that you can see the individual direction of the stitch. When we say digitized fonts, these are digitized to be scalable, which means that all of the push-pull inherent with stitching letters in different directions is taken into consideration. As we look here, and I've purposely chosen the A and E and the S because they are multi-directional. If you look on the E, you notice that you have vertical stitching, diagonal stitching, horizontal, vertical, horizontal, diagonal, and back to vertical. And in our S, we go through a vertical, diagonal, vertical, diagonal, vertical. Just a very brief horizontal right in there. And the A has no horizontal at all. If we do these same characters in TrueType font, TrueType font they come in digitized as a normal complex fill, not as this digitized scalable is done. And here you can see all you have is vertical stitching in these characters, and which gives us a very odd area right here in the S when we have a thicker vertical. If I turn on my 3D, look how nice these digitized fonts are. And whereas these TrueType fonts, they've worked, but it might not be the look that you are after because we have that vertical situation. If we take a look at monograms, here is we've used a built-in digitized font, that fancy script that is so pretty, and here is a sample done with the TrueType font Edwardian script. The digitized is done to do this character all in a fluid motion where it stops and starts, and it's done more as a columnar effect. When these TrueTypes are digitized, you see, and this is a perfect example, sometimes we do not get what we want. And if we look at that closer, you can see a lot of jump stitch in there, and it really does not stitch out in a normal fashion. It doesn't necessarily stitch out from top to bottom on that A. It might jump back and forth and do a little bit of this and then over here and so forth. And then the font itself gets so thin that there might only be one stitch. I'm not saying that you cannot use TrueType font. I have, and have been successful with many of them. What I'm saying is do be careful of your choice, because it might not give you what you are after. These are both done as TrueType font, Edwardian script. Here, if I right-click and do a convert to, and if I do a satin, you can see that in some characters it can't even recognize, because that is so thin in there, it doesn't recognize the different areas. And if I were to make that a complex fill, we're going to run into the same problems we see up here with the capitals. So again, it's up to you which fonts you use, but in using a TrueType, you're going to have a lot more editing necessary than if you used one of the built-in fonts. Okay, so enough words about those. Yes, you can use them. They're wonderful for applique, wonderful for artwork. We'll play with them next month when we do our shape tool, but just be aware of what you have here, especially when we're talking about monograms. All right, we'll stop right here. Dory, do we have any other questions?
Well, We do have a couple questions, and one of them happens to be from our friend Debbie, who would like to know what those Nito icons are on the side of your property box.
Right over here.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am, indeed. That is where we're headed. So thank you, Debbie. That was a great lead in to where we are heading next. So I'll bring up a clean screen. Um, Others may have also noticed these additional icons that are to the extreme right of the screen. If you have done if you've installed the newest version 8.66 that came out yesterday, and you own additional software other than Perfect Embroidery Pro, you also will see them. If I rest on these, you can see that this is from Word Art and Stitches. Here we have my quilt embellisher, my block piecer, and also my quilt planner. You will only see these in Perfect Embroidery Pro. If you have Word Art, you will not see any additional icons. If you have any of the quilts software, you will not see the additional icons. You only see them in Perfect Embroidery Pro because Perfect Embroidery Pro is really the parent software. And I say that because it is the full-blown digitizing software by Inspiration by Dime. It is, and it's reflected in the price as well. All of these other software are standalone software. You can have one of them, you can have all four of them, you can have all four of these, and maybe you don't yet own Perfect Embroidery Pro. You can do any combination of all or a few of the software, and they will each work perfectly independently of each other. But what this new update did for us is give us the opportunity that if you do own Perfect Embroidery Pro and any of these additional software icons that are right here, you will now see them. And the beauty of this is we can now use pieces and parts of this additional software right here in Perfect Embroidery Pro. Let me show you what I mean. If I click on Word Art and Stitches, and by the way, I have all of the software loaded on this computer, so that's why I'm seeing all of my icons. Here I am brought into the bubble text screen of Word Art. Some of you might be familiar with this. I'll go ahead and click on the ellipse. I'm going into states, and I'll drag down and pick my home state of Pennsylvania, and I've brought it to screen. I'm going to set it up just like I would if I were in Word Art, and maybe I will set this as a run stitch. I'll apply it so it renders my design with all of the options that I have chosen there, and I'll do an OK and bring this to screen. I'm going to drop us back to 100% in our zoom and turn on our 3D, and I am in Perfect Embroidery Pro, but I was able to bring one of the bubble text pieces right into my screen in Perfect Embroidery Pro. Why might I want to do that? I have now given myself all of the artwork capabilities and all of the other things that are available to me here in Perfect Embroidery Pro can now be brought to this particular design. I'm going to select my Word Art, I will ungroup it, and then go back in and select my Pennsylvania. One of the beauties of this is I can right-click and can convert it. Remember that Word Art gives us steal and run, but I can now come down here and click on Applique, and it is automatically an Applique design ready for me to place on whatever project that I have. So I can bring in bubble text right in here to Perfect Embroidery Pro. I can do a edit, and I could come down to resequence by color, a beautiful addition to the software because we sort of had to do that manually when we did it in Word Art. So again, using all of the wonderful characteristics of Perfect Embroidery Pro. Let me bring up a clean screen, and we'll come in here and do my quilt embellisher. If I click on that box, it's going to bring us into the catalog of all of the blocks available to you. Come down here to Wacky Blocks, and I will pick this Crazy Star number 5. This is normally used for piecing with your quilt fabrics and so forth, but now that I have it in Perfect Embroidery Pro, I could do a right-click, convert it to complex fill, and it will change all of that to stitching, as I see here. And then I could take this square out of the middle and delete that and add one of our monograms that we've been playing with this evening. Sizing that, I could choose a different shape, whatever I wanted to do there, but I could add other things, other designs, other pieces of art, and so forth to my design. We also have the ability, if you select any portion of this, under this flyout, do you notice that each of these icons have their own separate arrow, the flyout arrow? If I click on that, I can add texture to this particular selection. It brings me into my screen. I can double click on whatever one looks fun, and it has now added texture to that area. The flyout for word art is going to allow me to go to the ink spots or the stamps. If I click on ink spots, all these fun additional designs, very much like line art designs, I can add to my screen and maybe use that in my block as well. And then with your quilt block, same thing. If I were to, let me bring up a clean screen here. If I were to click on this screen, I am also brought into our blocks and so forth. I'll go back into my wacky blocks, and if I do my crazy kaleidoscope, I can right-click, convert that to Applique, and it's actually broken down into 2 different pieces, so I could select and drag that, and then I have 2 different ways to play with this design. One of the other things that is very fun, if we are in Perfect Embroidery Pro and we go back into our Applique shapes, that's where we got the shield for our pocket. We'll go ahead and bring up the butterfly, and here is an Applique shape. If I come over here to I have it selected, and I come over here to my block piecer and go into the cutter window. This is very cool for those of you that have a digital cutter like the Silhouette Cameo or the Brother Scan to Cut. We simply would take off the seam allowance, make that 0, and apply it, and this blue line that you have right here is representing the placement line of your applique. And if you do a save to that, you can bring that design file to your digital cutter and cut all of your applique shapes. So very cool addition to this. I'm going to open something that I've started to show you how much fun I had with these additions, especially word art. States happen to be a very trendy thing at the moment, and once I started playing with them I had a hard time stopping. But here is the Pennsylvania with no words in it, and Texas as well. And then because I'm in Perfect Embroidery Pro, I can come over here to use my symbols, select that, and I scrolled down to where my solid heart is listed in alphabetical order. Do a double click, click and drag to make a heart, and I copy pasted to put those as a loved one here in Pennsylvania, a loved one in Texas. And then to make that dashed line, all I did was to create, look what that is, it's the capital letter I done in a Bauhaus font, rotated, and I simply copy pasted it to make a dashed line from one heart to another. So if you have any weddings coming up in the future, this would make a very fun gift. And once I started on this, I really had a hard time stopping. Take a look here at some of the other samples I played with my 2 states. Since we did our monogramming, that also is a fun gift. You can get real sappy if you want to add the me and the you, as in you're far away and missing each other. Here's a nice gift idea where you put the monogram representing the letter O with their state. This would be a fun pillow. You could even do a ring bearer's pillow for that kind of thing. And then this is also a nice gift. And take a look at this letter O with the state. Let me show you quickly how I did that. It's very easy with this new edition of icons with this new version. I clicked on bubble text. Once again, went into my shapes and got my state. And in this case, I'll use Georgia. Some of my loved ones are there as well. I don't want any words, but I'm leaving it at artwork, so I really don't have to click on apply. I can just do an OK. It's brought into my screen, and it's brought in as artwork. If you take a look here, you see that it is artwork. Let's go up to our other artwork tools. I'll use my drop-down, the ellipse. I want a perfect circle, so I'll hold down my control key while I drag my circle, and I will select, and I'm actually going to make that Georgia just a little bit smaller for my circle. And with Georgia selected, I'll do a control select the circle and come up. I want them both center aligned, and just so you can see better, I'll put it in the middle of my screen. Now, the trick here is they are both pieces of artwork. You select both of them, come up here and use your combine key. This is a great tool. We do a combine. It is now considered one piece of artwork. So if I do a right click, convert to complex fill, we there have the O that is represented in this gift right here. So very easy to do. You can even add that heart to the middle of it. All right, very fun stuff for everyone when we are talking about those additions. Dory, do we have any final questions for this evening?
The program that has the states in it is Word Art and Stitches, correct?
That is correct. If I were to go over into the real Word Art and I have a clean screen and go in right here, my bubble text, clicking on that brings us into this bubble text dialog box, and I use my ellipse, and they are under states, and there's all 50 of them. Whichever one you need is right there. And this particular screen is the same screen that you'll see if you indeed own Word Art and Perfect Embroidery Pro. You will have, and you have that new version installed, you have your bubble art right there, and it brings us up into the same text box that we just were in, and here's your states. Okay. Just as a quick, if you're not quite sure what version you have, what's installed yet, this letter I, if you click on that for information, it will bring up right here. You can see that I have the new 8.66 version. And whereas Eileen mentioned I think she said the 8.62, even since her blog, we had a couple more additions to this. So this is the newest version, the one that you want if you indeed would like to see these additional icons. If you have the need, you can get to our website right there, Inspired by Dime. At this point, if you are ever at a loss for inspiration, just get on Pinterest and search for monograms. You see that I had a very good time in doing that. I hope I too have given you some inspiration. And do be sure to get a copy of the January-February 2016 issue of the Dime magazine, because the theme for that is monogramming. As always, thank you for joining me this evening, and thank you to the team for making this possible. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.